I'm super excited to have Amir Bey with me today. And Amir is one of our presenters at the 2024 Omega Astrology Conference. So for those of you who are still living under the rock, that conference is happening between the 7th and the 9th of June. And we have this amazing faculty, amazing theme and topic. And to me, it was important as an organizer to invite Amir. I was familiar with his work through OPA, and it really fit the concept of what we're trying to do in this kind of special focus conference. So it's a one-track conference, which means we are all together, and there are 5 speakers, and we're going to have also a gong player, Valerie. So it's an experience that's similar to a retreat, and Amir is bringing not only the astrology but art and experience, so that we're not just in our heads, we are also participating and using our senses to learn and to be together and to experience the stars. The theme of the conference is the turning of the age, and not just the age of Aquarius, but the age of Leo and Aquarius, because they operate as an axis. So Amir, I interrupted you, but here you are, and I think maybe our viewers would like to know more about you and how your art and your astrology have worked together and work together now. Tell us about you.
In the beginning, like when I was a kid, I had access to a lot of books on history and mythology. And, being a Pisces sun, it was not hard for me to imagine historical events or imagine mythological characters. And I think that is let's say, a shared foundation that both astrology and art have. That art is a documentation of historical events and also icons and let's say the imagery that people collectively relate to. And so astrology then is also historical, and it also communicates, and the occult communicates through visual imagery. The first occult experience, if I want to call it that, I ever had was when somebody showed me a tarot deck. I was 18, and I thought, wow, what is this? I mean, I just spaced out on the images. And, at that time I had spurned the Christian church, and so I was really open to alternate spiritualities, let's call it. So I evolved. I mean, I looked at those things, and the next thing was the I Ching. And then Dane Rudhyar turned my head around. I mean, I when I read his ideas, I thought, wow, this is so much broader and more vast than the stuff that I thought about. Even the other forms of occult stuff that I was into, Dane Rudhyar, something else. Plus, he was a visual artist and a poet. And also he wrote theater. And like me, then he was an interdisciplinary artist.
I'm familiar with the fact that you evolved to create your own tarot deck, which is fascinating. And I'm showing here, some of the images. Tell us about that, and when did it come about, and what's behind it? What did you try to represent and bring into this oracular art?
Well, that's an important question. And I say it's important because uh, in that project, both the occult and visual nurtured each other and helped for the evolution of that tarot deck. And so I started carving 36 figures for that, 36 for the 36 decans of the zodiac. Um, and so it evolved. This project evolved from certain notions, let's say, and then carving, like the physical and spiritual aspect of carving, and directly into stone. And so I surprised myself there because, again, with all my inconjuncts and my retrograde planets, I was really surprised when, damn, this thing works. These cards are, like something comes back at you that you're working on it, and damn, it works. It's like, I was just really amazed, and I thought about all the ways that I approached it, taking like numerically, taking one piece of stone and cutting it in 36 different parts. So I went from 1 to 36, and the numbers have properties, they have energies, and so this was something that I let's say evolved. This is something that evolved through the occult and through visual work.
And so, what are these carvings, these images about? What do they represent for you? I'm going to show
Well,
these images, as we edit this video.
mm,
But if you can briefly talk about your inspiration.
well, one thing that I learned and informed this project from astrology is that every moment is living. We are born with, like to say, our living charts with, the planets in their cycles. And so, in other words, everything has the signature of the time that something occurs, which is horary, and also to a degree electional, where a moment has some meaning to it. And if you execute something during a time, then it has the properties of that time.
Mhm.
And so, in doing this project, working with that stone, I thought about, taking one, which is the stone, and by dividing it into 36 for the decans, then that there was a signature then of each time I carved it. And each carving was spontaneous. I did not say, okay, this is the first decan of Aries, so therefore it's going to have this and that on it. Instead, what I did is I took the stone and I started carving it, without thinking about, well, what should this be, other than this is the first decan of Aries. I did that. Then the next one, and so on. It took me 4 years to do those 36 figures.
All right.
And yes, and so in that period, then it was like just a spontaneous release or meditation. And it was not like something that like was planned or that was traditional. Like this is a 36 card deck. It is not 78, which is what most decks are. It is not 4 suited. It is 3 suits, and other differences.
So all these photographs are basically your own carvings.
Right, they're my carvings, and they are moments, like, let's say, specific or unique moments that they were carved in, that I allowed for those images to come through me into the stone. And then after that, I understood, for instance, like we're looking at Carver. Carver is the first decan of Leo. And so this Carver is like expressive. It is also work. So Leo is the sign of romance and play, but it's also the sign that deals with a serious intent of just who a person is and what their voice is. It's just interesting that these 3 cards are actually all first decans of the signs. Like, she brings the gift of music is the first decan of Cancer. And you
Mhm.
can see that in the image. I mean, she brings the gift of music. This is something that you could say is Cancerian.
Mhm.
Um, Now, when I carve this, I'm not thinking, okay, this is going to be the first decan of Cancer. I knew it was, but I just allowed for whatever thing that was coming through my hands into the stone. And then the top one is the Pact, which is the first decan of Aquarius.
Mhm.
And so again, we can see like the idea of a pact, the idea of an agreement, which can be synonymous with a group activity that is joined by, let's say, a group of people that you might find in an Aquarian kind of enterprise.
Well, the deck will be available at Omega, I assume, in the
Yes.
library.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so all the participants will be able to not only get the deck, but get it signed by you. And I think it would be exciting to also bring the deck in, in your uh, art and presentation at Omega. I wonder, if there's something you thought about. And so let's talk about that because I know we've talked so much about how how we want to make this Omega experience a ceremony, a an inspiring moment, not just a study of astrology, not just a retreat in beautiful nature, but an actual act of an activation of sort as
Mm.
a collective, as a group. And your part is evolving. We're looking at the logistical sides of how to bring your installation, and we're looking at the themes of the conference. And so it's something that keeps growing with time. But do you have some kind of objective, what would you want to achieve at the conference? And
Well,
what do
I
you,
think
how is it going to look like?
I one thing that I like to do with my visual work and also with astrology or the occult is to have a shared experience. Uh, for instance, when I do readings for people, I have a mandala with the planets on it. I bring people, to that, and I discuss the planets. And these are metal planets. I mean, they're copper. I also have bronze series of planets, and so people then are able to see their chart. They can touch their chart. It's
And so
something
that's
that,
in-person readings.
yes, in-person readings. Yeah, people, because I
And
want
where
them
are
to.
you? Are you in the world? Where do we get in-person readings with you?
Well, this would be like in a studio situation. Yeah, this is people come, where I do my reading. I mean, I prefer to do my readings in person. I've done them in Zoom, but if you do them in Zoom, then you're not going to have the effect of having a mandala with your planets on them, and you're not going to have someone reciting to you their degrees and what they mean, and that's how I start the reading. And then after that, then we sit down with the chart and we discuss it further. But
And
that's
just
the
to
experience.
tell, the those who are viewing this, you're in New York City.
Yes.
Okay. Just so that people know where they should go if they want to read it.
Oh yeah, right. New York City.
Closest
And
airport. And I want to share another piece here that's really compelling. This is again a beautiful marriage of astrology and art. Um,
it's
any
also my
word on this?
granddaughter.
It's your granddaughter's chart.
Yes. uh, Now, okay, this is where I'm combining visual concepts with astrology. The visual concepts is that in Japanese and Chinese art, they have something, well, in Japanese, it's called an inkan, which, you're carving images in stone and you're using them as a stamp. So what I did was I carved the images of planets and also of signs, and then I stamped her chart on there, And so there's a lot in there. Of course, there's a lot in every visual chart. Um, but one thing that is interesting about her chart is that beginning with my father, born 1920, myself 1950, my son 1980, and then her 2010, we all have Mars in Libra. That's 30 years apart from each other.
All right.
And then she missed now myself, my father, and my son. We all have not only Mars in Libra, but we have Saturn in Virgo, which is, 30, 30, 30, actually 29, 29, 29, or like that. She missed having her Saturn in Virgo by a few months. So she missed, but she still has that. She's the fourth person of our family line, coming from my father, me, my son, and her, who have Mars in Libra, right? 30 year, and actually my mother too was born in 1920 as well. But she does not have that Mars in Libra. She's got her Mars in Capricorn. But so that anyway, so that's what I was doing there. I was doing that on rice paper, and I'm using sumi ink, which is Japanese ink. So I'm really combining Japanese visual traditions on rice paper with this ink and astrological concept.
And so that takes me to the fact that you do a lot of work in Japan, and you go there regularly, and you incorporate, cultural elements of Japan as well in your work. And we talked about, you thinking, under duress in the United States politics, that Japan may be an option. And so that's a very interesting fusion, obviously, astrology, Japanese textures and techniques, and your own ancestry of African American, and your carving. I mean, it's so rich. And so tell us a little bit, whatever is now in your mind. How do you see that evolving for our Omega conference? As we are, you mentioned collaborating, experiential, participating. You have some of your installations behind you in the video.
Well, it's very interesting. As I mentioned to you before, for the first time in my life, my Mars, which was retrograde at birth, started going direct. I think it was about 9 months ago. And, and that kind of, on the one hand, scared me. Wow, my Mars, which is already in trouble in the fourth house in Libra, it's going to go direct, but what am I going to burn down next? I mean, and it's sure enough, I did have some hassles with family members. And then also I've done some other things with friends. I've initiated certain new things. And I really regard, on a personal level, I think the thing that I'm going to be doing at Omega is part of my Mars waking up and expressing itself. For many years, I've been sitting on this Mars. Now I have I've got 2 apartments filled with art. Okay, I've been doing charts since '71. I've got a lot of background in art and in the occult, and so this is the Omega thing. I think is really part of me, where certain things have been submerged. I'm now able to release them. Um,
Beautiful.
yeah, and so one thing that I think that I see. I'm just looking at the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that's coming up. Now, Jupiter is an important planet for me because it's on the same degree as my 9th house cusp, if you're using Placidus. It is in Aquarius, so it has a Jupiter-Uranus quality
Flavor.
to it. Yeah, and so that is something that I'm looking at. I think that Jupiter-Uranus can be a very troublesome thing. It can be explosive as well as liberating.
So
It
let me
does not.
share let me share the Omega chart. This is the time where the conference begins. And you talked about the Jupiter Uranus, which is a very important aspect for astrologers, I believe.
Hmm.
It's many astrologers are born with Jupiter, Uranus, Jupiter
Mm.
11th house aspects because it combines these high-minded study and expansive explorations of how, you know, space, planets affect personal lives. And so it's
Hmm.
very important for us culturally and as astrologers. And we are in this year of a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, and Omega happens right as this conjunction is, starting to separate, and Jupiter moves into Gemini with Mercury, the ruler of Gemini. And there's also another really potent conjunction of Venus Sun, which is referred to as the Venus star point, happening that
Mm.
same week
Hmm.
earlier.
Hmm.
And so these massive alignments, and the conference begins with a Sag rising, and the Sun angular, that Sun Venus angular.
Hmm.
And you mentioned your nodes and your Mars in Libra, which is happening also during this conference. So I think, it's going to come through, as you say.
Well,
Um,
the one thing that I'm looking at, just on a personal note, is that my solar return on February 19th has the moon at like 8 degrees Cancer.
all
So
right.
this moon here is within 2 degrees of my solar return moon. The moon is my ruling planet. I have a Cancer rising, and my moon is practically elevated. I mean, it's culminating, but the sun is actually a little more elevated than the moon. So the moon is very important for me. I like how this moon is growing in light
Yeah.
for the conference. So we have Sun Venus conjunct with the moon. Even though it's still in the early phases, but it's in a nice position. It's I don't always think that void of course is a problem. I've seen many charts where void of course does not factor in anything really.
Yeah.
So it depends really more on how it aspects your chart or other
But this
things.
one is not void, of course, anyway.
No, that's
It's
what I'm
it's
saying. It is not
yeah.
void of course, but I'm also saying that at the same time, though, I don't always see void of course moons as being a problem. But I do see though that this moon is figures very well with my chart. So I think I should be okay. I think I have a certain amount of juice here. Uh,
Yeah.
Even though Saturn is opposite my Saturn, my
Well,
Saturn.
that's you,
Yep.
gaining authority. But what's
Yep.
interesting also with the moon in Cancer, it's a new moon and it's beautiful because you start to see, the first crescent appearing
Mm.
as it's setting. But the interesting thing is that it's also flavoring the conference. That even though it's dozens of people together, it's like I said, it's an experience, and it's also that connection, that it's emotional connection. You have the Gemini that comes to learn, and you have the Cancer that connects and really feels like you're part of a tribe, you're part of a movement. You're not just, anonymous in the crowd. And the Sag, brings the obvious travel and high knowledge and astrologers really capture the Sagittarius themes very well. And
There's a lot of air there. Yeah, I see that stellium in Gemini, plus Pluto in Aquarius. So there's a lot of communication
and
potential there.
and the theme of the conference, is very much centered into the Aquarius Leo new turning of the ages. And I'm going to talk about this with Lynn Bell a little bit and with other members of the faculty. The fact that the turning of the ages is not a one-day event. It's not like, oh, we're in the Pisces age and tomorrow we're in the Aquarius age. It's an overlap. It's a fusion and it's a process. And so the fact that we're also elevating, all the air brings a lot of community. And we speak about the turning of the ages as Pluto is
Mhm.
obviously entering, the sign of Aquarius.
Mhm.
So a lot of exciting things.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing up
Hey, I'm
and
always
participating.
really happy to share, and be a part of this.
We look forward to an amazing time, and maybe we'll catch up again before or
Hmm.
after. And I'm really curious. Maybe I will have a reading with you, once we come back from Omega, um, when I'm in New York City.
Hey, that'll be nice. Yeah. Well, I have a lot of things I'd like to share with you. Visual and also occult. So yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Amir.
Mhm.
Until then.
All right, now stay warm and dry.